He cannot protect jobs in this country on that basis.
We don't know on which side Mr. Corbyn would campaign. What could be more ruinous for the NHS than a crackpot plan for a 4-day week?
His proposal for 40 new hospitals, which he grandly announced in July, turns out to be 6 reconfigurations.
Yes, it is true that we are starting with 6, but the seed funding has got in.
So where did the 40 come from?
40 new hospitals, and the investment is going in now.
Modern day politics, ladies and gentlemen, the art of bickering instead of coming up with solutions. This type of governing has resulted in many people turning their backs on politics as matters that affect them directly are not being dealt with.
What's the point in voting? They don't care about it.
Yeah, forget it, man. Don't vote. It's a waste of time.
What's the point? I ain't voting. Fuck that shit.
On this episode of Foreign Concept,
We compare the two main political candidates battling for 10 Downing Street whilst trying to understand their party's ideology and how it affects us.
Foreign Concept, the unapologetically black podcast.
I don't know anything about it. What's politics?
Politics is defined as a set of activities associated with the governance of a country or a state.
I beg your pardon?
To break that down, politics is basically the general system in which things get done in society by the government. And by the government, I mean the group of people that coordinate and control the society or the state. And by the state, we mean the people that govern under a political party.
Okay, I see. So what's this left-wing, right-wing ideology we hear about? Can you explain that?
The terms left and right wing was initially introduced to society in the 18th century during the French Revolution.
Je suis un Congolais.
Those who supported the revolution were considered left-wing activists who wanted to see change, whilst those who supported the monarch were classed as right-wing ideologists who wanted to keep the existing state of affairs.
What does ideology mean?
Ideology is a system of ideas which forms the basis of economics and politics.
The difference between left and right-wing ideology fundamentally comes down to the balance between individual liberty and government power. Parties on the left include Labour, the Greens and the Democratic Party, while those on the right include the Republicans, Conservatives and the UK Independence Party.
Yeah, that's all good and proper, but who are you voting for?
For years, people have been voting for the same political parties without fully understanding what their ideology is. For instance, in the United Kingdom, black people have always been told to vote for Labour based on the assumption that they are progressive thinkers, when in reality, you should only vote for a political party if they cater to your social and economic needs. So for example, if you're someone who earns a substantial amount, or if you're an inspiring entrepreneur with the aim of owning your own business one day, then perhaps Labour may not be the political party for you, as their ideology involves increasing regulations on businesses and taxing the rich at a higher rate. Whereas the Conservatives believe that the government should have a limited role when it comes to businesses.
Economically, the right can often be seen using the new classical approach, which includes having a laissez-faire policy. This roughly translates to leave things alone and means less regulation to increase innovation and lower taxes to increase growth. In short, the right views government interference in business as a bad thing and thinks that the market prospers best when left to its own devices.
Consequently, if you're from the working class, then the best option for you is to vote for Labour, as one of their main goals is to strive for an equal society. Therefore, you wouldn't be getting taxed as much as the wealthier members of society.
The left often follow the Keynesian, or as it's sometimes called, the interventionist school of thought. In brief, this system would have the government intervene to avoid an economic recession. This means taxing highly during good or boom times and spending this money when the economy truly needs it.
With that being said, there are also other factors in which one must consider before voting for a political party.
Can you tell us about the political parties and candidates running for the general election on the 12th of December?
The two main political parties vying for control of the nations are
The Conservatives and Labour.
The Conservatives are currently being led by a highly controversial character known as Boris Johnson. Boris was the former mayor of London and the Foreign Secretary. He comes from a wealthy family which enabled him to attend the best schools and the best university this country has to offer without being the sharpest tool in the box.
That's a metaphor for he lacks intelligence.
He is the current leader of the Conservative Party by default, as the person he replaced,
Theresa May,
resigned. Boris has made countless racist and sexist comments such as
Muslim women who wear the full burqa look like letterboxes and bank robbers. Black people have watermelon smiles. Master, can I get some watermelon?
He justifies these comments by saying they were taken out of context instead of just apologising and keeping it moving.
Apologise for calling, describing women wearing bugs as bank robbers and letterboxes. You're now under investigation. Will you apologise for that, or do you think that was okay?
As I say, I stand by what I wrote.
He also has a proven record of lying, as he was previously sacked for making up statements whilst he was a journalist. However, because of his connection, he was able to sweep the matter under the carpet. On the other side of the political spectrum
Is Jeremy Corbyn.
The leader of the opposition. Jeremy is a democratic socialist who is currently representing Labour. He has a proven track record of trying to tackle social injustices
such as the apartheid in South Africa, where natives were subject to ridiculous laws and hardship.
He was also against the war in Iraq, which resulted in him being called a terrorist.
Sympathiser.
We recognise this war for what it is. It's not about peace. It's not about democracy. It's not about justice. It's a war about oil, and it's a war where the main beneficiaries will be the arms manufacturers who've made so much out of so much misery for so long.
Corbyn has been accused of being anti-Semitic, as in 2016 he announced an independent inquiry into anti-Semitic and other forms of racism within the Labour Party. The report found that the Labour Party on occasions
displayed a toxic atmosphere when it came to anti-Semitism.
Ever since then, the media have made it their business to make him apologise for something he wasn't directly responsible for. Ironically, most of the media seem to ignore the fact that Boris Johnson physically made racist comments, unlike Jeremy Corbyn.
Is there some sort of media propaganda going on then?
Yes, there is. Most people have figured out that 80% of the media are far-right supporters. And the fact that Boris used to be a journalist means they go out their way to protect one of their own.
Seems like you're leaning towards Jeremy more than Boris.
People have to understand that the Conservatives have been in power for over 10 years now. And during that time frame,
many people claim this is the worst the society has been.
They started off by making false promises of ending child poverty, which stats show under their government has increased. The Conservatives also said they would cut immigration down by 100,000, which helped them gain those
Get them out
type of supporters.
Ironically, those people don't know that Boris Johnson was actually born in New York City.
Haha, get him out. When the Labour Party was in charge, university fees used to be 3,000 a year, but the Conservatives raised it to 9,000.
Thanks for that.
And now they plan on privatising the NHS, which means paying to receive treatment or even ride the ambulance. Social issues such as hate crime has also doubled under the Conservatives.
But yet, they still made police cuts.
The number of people on benefits has increased dramatically as the Tories believe that wealth should be sprinkled down from the top to the bottom, leading to many working class people becoming homeless.
On any one night in England, 3,500 people are living rough on the street. Last year, 275,000 people approached their local authority for homeless assistance. That can't be right. That's fucking mental. 124,000 children living in temporary accommodation. Fucking children. Over half of homeless services have seen their funding cut in the last 5 years.
Bruh.
That's all messed up. So how do Labour plan on changing all of this?
60 seconds to run through as many of the policies as I can. 26 billion for our NHS, recruiting the doctors and nurses we need, 1 million new affordable homes to rent or buy with the biggest council house building programme in decades. We'll give you the final say on Brexit within 6 months. We'll end NHS privatisation, bring down waiting lists and put patients first. We'll scrap university tuition fees, kickstart a green industrial revolution to tackle the climate emergency and create hundreds of thousands of new green jobs of the future. We'll build a national care service with free personal care for over 65s, the fastest fibre optic broadband free for all, a Sure Start centre in every community. We'll protect the pension triple lock, protect the free bus pass, protect the winter fuel payment and protect the over 75s free TV licence, a real living wage of at least £10 per hour for all workers, boosting the pay of 7.5 million people, introduce a national education service, making world-class education available throughout people's lives, more money for schools, reduce class sizes and have public ownership of water, energy and Royal Mail. We'll double the spend on children's mental health and have a counsellor in every school to take railways into public ownership.
In contrast, all Boris Johnson seems to talk about is Brexit,
He hasn't said anything about the social issues
which people are currently facing these days.
and it's for that reason that people should consider voting for Labour instead of the Conservatives.
Foreign Concept, the unapologetically black podcast.